Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into missing person cases in U.S. national parks today, and you've given me a ton of material from Steve Stockton's Missing Persons Mysteries YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, that's Stockton. He really gets into those strange disappearances.
He does. His videos are fascinating, but it's important to remember these are real people we're talking about, real families who are still searching for answers.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
So as we explore these cases, let's try to understand the bigger picture. Are there any patterns or commonalities that might help us shed light on these events?
That's what we're here to find out. What does Stockton's channel tell us about the overall scope of the issue?
Well, he emphasizes that the number of people reported missing in national parks has been increasing in recent years, and these parks cover millions of acres of wilderness.
Millions of acres. Wow, it's easy to imagine how someone could get lost out there.
Exactly. That vastness alone presents a significant challenge for search and rescue efforts.
Okay, so with that scale in mind, which cases really stand out from your research?
One that immediately comes to mind is Kyle Britton. He was 27 years old when he disappeared in Hawaii's Waipio Valley State Park back in August 2019.
What happened?
Well, that's the mystery. He was an experienced hiker, yet he vanished without a trace.
That's always unsettling when someone with outdoor experience goes missing. It makes it feel even more mysterious somehow.
It does. His car was found right at the trailhead, and his cell phone last pinged around noon on the day he disappeared, and then nothing.
So the searches didn't turn up anything?
Nothing. Search teams combed the area but found no sign of him.
Do we know anything about the terrain? Could that have played a role?
Well, the valley is known for its ruggedness, and it rained the day Kyle disappeared, which could have made the trails more treacherous.
But you'd think an experienced hiker would be prepared for those conditions.
You would think so. Kyle's father believes there's a possibility he slipped and got injured, making him unable to call for help. But the lack of any clues, even after extensive searches, is what makes this case so baffling.
It really is. It's like he just stepped off the path and into thin air.
It's true. And that feeling of vanishing without a trace, that brings us to the case of Kiara Henry. She was 23 years old, and she disappeared from Maui's Wainapanapa State Park in July 2019.
I remember that case. It was so strange, the discrepancy between her rental car arrangements and her apparent plans.
Right. Her rental car was found abandoned in the park, which isn't unusual in itself.
Right.
But she had only rented the car for one night, yet she tried to book a hotel in Kihei for the following week and even had a flight home scheduled.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like someone planning to disappear.
Exactly. So it seems like she intended to return but never made it.
What about her belongings? Did they find anything?
Her phone last connected to Wi-Fi the morning she disappeared, and her backpack, car key, and iPhone haven't been found despite thorough searches.
It's as if she walked away from her rental car and vanished into thin air.
It really is. These cases are so strange.
They start to feel like pieces of a puzzle, don't they? You start to wonder if there's a connection, a bigger picture we're missing.
It's possible. Okay, let's move on to a case that occurred in a completely different environment. Daniel Rosano. He vanished while hiking Mount Charleston in Nevada in August 2019.
I remember that one. He seemed so prepared for his hike. It's almost like he over-prepared.
That's what's so strange about it. He bought all this new gear, a backpack, lantern, jacket, hat, hiking stick, food, water, gloves, the works. But none of those items were ever found.
That is curious. It's one thing to lose a single item, but to have all your gear disappear, it almost suggests he deliberately left it behind.
That's one theory, but we have no evidence to support it. It's just another layer of mystery to this already puzzling case.
Speaking of puzzling, let's talk about John Clinton Walker, who went missing in Bellingham, Washington back in 2014. His car was found abandoned, but unlike Daniel Rosano, he left most of his belongings behind.
Yeah, this case is difficult to analyze because there's limited information available. What we do know is that John was an avid hiker, so it's unusual that he wouldn't have taken his gear with him.
It makes you wonder if he intended to go hiking at all?
It's possible. Maybe he had a different destination in mind and something happened along the way. Or maybe the lack of information is making us overthink things.
Maybe. Let's look at a case where we have a few more clues, or at least we think we do. Nicholas Haupst. He was 22, and he disappeared in April 2019.
Oh yeah, what was it about his case?
It involves a detail that really caught my attention, his white German shepherd named Samantha.
Ah, yes. His car was found abandoned in the Chequamegon-Nicolet National Forest, and it seemed to have been there for some time. They found a tarp and camping gear near the vehicle, but his dog's collar was found a half-mile away, unclasped.
It's that unclasped collar that really gets me thinking. Was Nicholas' experience with camping and wilderness survival?
His parents described him as an outdoorsman, but the circumstances surrounding his disappearance remain unclear.
And they never found his dog either.
No extensive searches were conducted, but unfortunately they yielded no further clues about Nicholas's whereabouts or what happened to Samantha.
It's heartbreaking to imagine both of them out there somewhere lost and alone. These cases really emphasize how quickly things can go wrong in the wilderness.
They do. We should probably move on, though. We
Yeah.
have a lot more to cover.
Okay, let's talk about another case. Joseph Wilford Barrett. He vanished while hiking in Grand Canyon National Park in June 2016. What's concerning about this case is that he went missing during a period of extreme heat.
The Grand Canyon in extreme heat. That's dangerous even for experienced hikers.
It is. And Joseph wasn't as experienced as some of the hikers we've discussed. He got separated from his group, and the National Park Service conducted a 6-day search, but they found nothing. It's like the canyon just swallowed him whole.
It really is. It makes you wonder what other secrets these parks hold.
It's both fascinating and terrifying, right? Even with all our technology and search and rescue resources, people just seem to disappear.
It's true. It leads us to a question, though. What are the factors that contribute to these disappearances? Are there commonalities across these cases that might help us understand them better?
That's a great question, and one we'll delve into further in part 2 of our deep dive. We'll examine more disappearances and look for patterns, insights, or any clues that might help us solve these perplexing puzzles. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into missing person cases in U.S. national parks. We're continuing to explore these mysteries, and I'm really struck by the variety of circumstances we're seeing.
Yeah, it's like each case has its own unique puzzle, but there's also that common thread of vanishing without a trace, leaving behind more questions than answers.
Exactly. Let's look at another case that highlights this pattern. Jason Lee Lovelady. He disappeared in 2013 while picking pine cones with his family in Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest.
Pine cones. That's not exactly the high adventure activity we usually associate with these disappearances.
Right, it makes it even stranger that he was just walking ahead of his family and then poof, gone.
Like he stepped into another dimension.
Yeah, kind of. And despite extensive search efforts, no sign of Jason or even the bucket he was carrying has ever been found.
It's like he just ceased to exist. The authorities haven't ruled out foul play, have they?
Not officially, but there's no evidence to support that theory either.
So the case remains open but unsolved.
Pretty much. Let's switch gears a bit and talk about a case that involves a missing vehicle. Nate Ashby, he was 22 and vanished in July 2019, along with his white Chevy Silverado pickup truck.
I remember that case. He wasn't near a national park when he went missing, was he?
Not directly, but the area where he was last seen is surrounded by woods, and there have been other unexplained disappearances in that same region.
So his case might be part of a larger pattern, even though it didn't happen in a national park. That's scary.
Yeah.
Did they ever find him or his truck?
Neither Nate nor his truck has ever been found, which just adds another layer of mystery to the whole thing.
It makes you think, what could possibly lead to someone vanishing along with their vehicle? Okay, let's move on to a case that has a really interesting detail. Garen Kirk, his car was found in a campground parking lot, but his intended hiking route, based on cell phone data, seems to have taken him in a completely different direction.
Oh yeah, his cell phone pinged southwest of Frog Lake, but the main search area was focused northeast of the lake.
Exactly. It's as if he went off course on purpose, but why? And they never found him.
No. Despite a massive search effort involving multiple agencies, no trace of Garen has ever been found.
It's almost like the wilderness just swallowed him up. It really shows how easy it is to get lost, even if you think you know where you're going.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about a case where we have some initial clues that seemed promising but ultimately led nowhere. Melvin Nall.
I remember that case. He was bow hunting with friends, right?
Yes, in the Santa Fe National Forest. He told his friends he wouldn't go far, but then never came back. They found his footprints leading away from the campsite, but then the scent dogs lost his trail.
This is where it gets interesting. He left most of his gear, including his GPS unit, locked in his car. Why would an experienced outdoorsman do that?
It's a good question, and it's fueled a lot of speculation. Some people think he might have staged his disappearance, but we just don't know for sure.
So another mystery. Okay, let's move on to a case that adds another layer of complexity. Terrence Woods, he went missing in Idaho while working on a documentary film crew.
This one's especially strange because it happened just a few miles from where another person, Connie McCalls, vanished on the very same day.
Two disappearances, same area, same day. That can't be a coincidence.
It's hard to believe it is.
Oh,
But despite extensive searches for both Terrence and Connie, no trace of either has ever been found.
that's so unsettling. Their cases are forever linked in this web of mystery. It makes you wonder if there's something about that location.
It does raise some questions. Is it just a tragic coincidence, or is there something more at play? And this brings us back to that recurring theme of the vastness and potential dangers of these national parks.
Even with all our technology and search and rescue expertise, these wilderness areas can still hold secrets and dangers we may never fully understand.
That's for sure. Let's talk about a case that really highlights the unforgiving nature of these landscapes. Floyd Roberts III, he went missing in Grand Canyon National Park in June 2016.
The Grand Canyon. Didn't we talk about another disappearance there earlier?
Yes, Joseph Barrett.
Yeah.
And both cases occurred during periods of extreme heat, which is a serious factor to consider in the Grand Canyon.
Of course. So what happened to Floyd?
He became separated from his hiking companions, and despite a 6-day search by the National Park Service, he was never found.
It's a reminder that even with companions and some level of experience, things can go wrong quickly in extreme conditions. The Grand Canyon seems to be a recurring location in our deep dive. Do we know if it has a higher than average rate of disappearances?
That's a good question. I don't have those statistics off the top of my head, but it's worth noting that the Grand Canyon is one of the most visited national parks, and its vastness and terrain definitely contribute to the risks.
It would be interesting to see that data. Okay, let's talk about another hiker who vanished in the Grand Canyon. Drake Kramer. He went missing in July 2015, and there were absolutely no clues.
He was last seen at the Bright Angel Lodge, a popular spot for visitors. Despite extensive searches, including aerial reconnaissance and dog teams, no trace of Drake was ever found.
Dog teams. How do those work in such a vast area?
Scent dogs are trained to follow the unique scent of a specific individual. They can cover a lot of ground quickly, and their sense of smell can detect things human searchers might miss.
So even with those specialized resources, they couldn't find any trace of Drake. It's almost like he deliberately disappeared.
It's possible, but again, we have no evidence to support that theory.
Okay, let's move on to another Grand Canyon disappearance that's particularly strange. Morgenheimer. He went missing in June 2015 while working as a commercial guide for a rafting company.
Morgan's case is really weird. He was last seen standing at the river's edge, and then poof, he was gone.
Just like that, no warning.
Nope, a member of his group saw him there one moment, and then he was just gone. Park rangers and search and rescue teams searched everywhere, but no sign of Morgan was ever found.
These cases where someone just vanishes without a trace, they really make you question reality, don't they?
They do. It's like there are forces at play that we just don't understand yet.
Okay, let's talk about a case that takes us back in time. Jason Knapp. He vanished from Clemson University in South Carolina in April 1998.
That case has been a mystery for over 2 decades. There was a receipt for food in his car dated the day after he disappeared, but then nothing. No further signs of him.
And his car was locked with most of his belongings, including his camping gear, still inside.
Yes. It's as if he drove to the park, stepped out of his car, and vanished.
Chilling. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the Mojave Desert. Barbara Thomas. She was 69 and disappeared in July 2019 while hiking with her husband.
The Mojave is such a harsh environment. She was just walking ahead of her husband on the trail and then disappeared.
It's so easy to get disoriented in the desert. Even experienced hikers can get lost quickly.
Exactly. And the vastness of the desert makes searching incredibly difficult. Despite an extensive aerial and ground search, no trace of Barbara was ever found.
It's a reminder that even with someone you trust and in a place you think you know, the wilderness can still be dangerous.
Very true. Speaking of experienced hikers who vanished, Samantha Sayers. She disappeared in August 2018 while hiking solo in the North Cascade Mountains.
I remember that case. The search effort was massive.
It was one of the largest and longest searches ever conducted in that area, but they found nothing.
The North Cascades are known for their rugged terrain and unpredictable weather. Could that have played a role?
It's possible, but Samantha was an experienced hiker and well prepared for the conditions. Her disappearance remains a complete mystery.
It's like she stepped off the trail and into another world. Okay, let's talk about Paul Miller. He went missing in Joshua Tree National Park in July 2018 while photographing bighorn sheep.
That's another case with just enough clues to be really baffling. His rental car was found at the trailhead, but his cell phone was back at his hotel.
So he drove to the trailhead, left his phone, and then vanished. Did they find his camera equipment?
No, nothing. Despite an expensive search involving hundreds of people, none of his belongings were ever recovered.
It's like he walked into the desert and disappeared. Let's talk about one last case before we move on to our final part. Devin Williams. He was a truck driver who disappeared in May 1995 near Kingman, Arizona.
That one's interesting because of the strange events leading up to his disappearance. Witnesses saw his semi-truck being driven erratically, and when they talked to him, he seemed to be acting strangely.
What happened next?
He abandoned his truck in a campground and disappeared into the woods.
Abandoned his truck. That's not normal. Did the police think it was foul play?
There was no sign of a crime or struggle. His truck was clean and his things were still inside. It's as if he just walked away from his life.
Maybe he had a sudden change of heart or something. So did they ever find him?
2 years later, they found his skull near where he was last seen, but the cause of death was undetermined.
So another mystery. It seems like we have a lot more cases to discuss.
We do. Let's continue exploring these missing person mysteries in part 3. What other intriguing stories await us?
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've gone over so many fascinating cases, and I have to say I'm feeling a bit uneasy.
Yeah, it's hard not to feel a sense of wonder mixed with maybe a little bit of fear as we get deeper into these mysteries.
Definitely. Before we finish up, I'd love it to hear your thoughts on some of the patterns we've seen. What really stands out to you as we've examined these cases?
Well, one thing that's really striking is just how many people vanish without a trace. Even experienced outdoor enthusiasts just gone. No clues, no belongings, no remains.
It's like they just disappear into thin air. It's baffling and a bit scary, honestly.
It is, and it makes you wonder what we really know about these environments,
Right. It's not just the backcountry either. We've seen disappearances in campgrounds, on trails, places you'd think would be safe.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important point, the need for preparation and awareness, no matter how experienced you are or how safe you think the area is.
That's a good point. These cases are a good reminder that nature can be unpredictable, and we have to respect that.
Absolutely. Even with the best preparation, things can still happen. So it's important to let someone know your plans, share your itinerary, and have a way to communicate in case of an emergency.
That could save your life. So as we wrap up our deep dive, I'm left with a sense of awe at all these unsolved mysteries. What are your final thoughts on the unknown?
I think these cases really highlight how much we still don't know about the world. Despite all our technology and science, there are still forces and phenomena that we just don't understand.
That's both humbling and exciting, the idea that there's still so much out there to discover.
Exactly. And I think these cases also remind us how fragile life is and how important it is to cherish our connections with loved ones.
Because you never know when someone might just vanish.
That's true. And while we might not have all the answers, I think there's something valuable in exploring these mysteries and trying to understand the world around us.
I agree. This deep dive has been fascinating, and I appreciate your insights and the way you've treated these cases with respect.
It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive and that it's inspired you to keep exploring the mysteries around us. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep exploring.